Hello folks. So today I actually want to speak about a topic that I've been meaning to speak about for a while now. Before I get started, if you need to contact me or you want to find me on social media, I have put the links in the description box below. And yes, I am still doing readings for those of you who have asked about it. Yeah. All right, so let's get started. Now, the topic, of course, is why does astrology not work for me? If your focus is always, I'm a Gemini or I'm a Taurus, and you're asking what is happening for me, constantly following the planets around, then astrology can easily become a crutch in your life. Now, if your goal is entertainment, then this is fine. Otherwise, you will constantly be disappointed. But if your focus shifts from that starting point to I'm a Taurus, and my chart basically shows me the themes and the focus of this incarnation, how I can meet my purpose, where I can serve others, and when to take action, and when to do nothing, which is very important, then astrology can serve you well. Now, even if astrology is working for you in this way, ultimately your aim should be to transcend even this space. Yeah. Because the over-reliance on the planetary movements means that you get stuck in the bondage of the world. Because you're always planning your thoughts and actions around where Mars is, where Saturn is, etc., etc. Yeah. So how do you transcend it then? Well, you have to trust yourself unconditionally, completely. And how do you do that? Well, it takes practice. It takes practice to do this. It takes practice to sharpen your intuition. And of course, a devoted spiritual practice is very helpful to do this. So then when you hear that inner voice, for any answer that you need, you will hear it loud and clear, and you won't doubt yourself. Now, I'm going to split this talk into two sections. Part one, which is going to be the meeting with the astrologer. And part two, what is the real purpose of astrology? Yeah, so let's get into this. Part one. Now, analyzing an experience is very different from living out that same experience. I'm sure you would all agree with me on that. So absolutely no astrologer out there, no matter how good they are, can tell you about your life with better accuracy than your own observations. Remember, life plays out in patterns for everyone. They will keep repeating, no matter what you do. The same type of opportunities and themes will keep coming back into your life. So only you can tell how you responded in the past and how you will respond to that in the present. Your response could stay the same if you want a similar outcome, which is sometimes actually the right thing to do. So nothing wrong with that. But only you can tell. And your emotions will give you a clue. Even the negative ones, don't dismiss them. Negative emotions actually contain a lot of information. We tend to dismiss them very quickly because they're uncomfortable, and then we also judge them harshly. Your intuition, of course, can also guide you. It's not just the emotions. If you can manage to detach yourself from that situation for a little bit of time. Yeah. Remember, no matter how good the astrologer is, the astrologer's experience will also color the reading that they have with you. And if the astrologer's life experience is limited by age or lack of knowledge, then this will surely reflect in the reading. Whether you see it or not, you will definitely feel it. And you will straight away know which bits in the reading resonate with you and which bits in the reading are completely off the radar. So here again, do not neglect your own intuition. You're on the receiving end of this, remember. You need not be receptive to everything that the astrologer tells you. Okay? If it doesn't feel right to you, you will know. Learn also to see and listen to omens around you as well, even during the reading, for some clues. If the astrologer is practicing astrology for an ego kick or a power trip, then of course this too will color the reading. And what do I mean by that? Well, there are astrologers out there that like to make very punchy claims and predictions to feel, powerful. Like, for example, you will never succeed in business no matter what you do, because look at your chart. You will never ever be able to buy a house of your own. You will never ever be able to get married, because look at your chart. You will never have children. You will never go abroad. You will never ever ever ever. You get the idea. Now, they may, and I'll give you some examples and that I've seen in my own practice. They may also say that you will never finish college because you have children. But then what happens? Well, your child abruptly leaves home and you receive an inheritance from your grandfather, and you finally go back to school. You use that money from the inheritance and you finally go back to school. So what happened there? Well, maybe the astrologer never saw the charts of your child or your grandfather, right? That's one possibility. Because remember, everyone's life is intertwined. We're all connected. And therefore, what is lacking in strength in your chart may be strong in your family's chart, or vice versa, right? I've seen charts where it looks like having a child for that person is nearly impossible. And by the way, there's no such thing as totally impossible, yeah? Because this is not an exact science that we're talking about here. But it turns out that this is not the case for the partner that they chose to be with. In fact, in their partner's chart, it's very strongly indicated when that child is coming. And who knows, perhaps that's the reason why they chose to be with this person, right? Because we often choose people that will kind of help us to balance out our life, to balance out that what we're missing, what we're lacking. Or you could hear a negative prediction that you will never go abroad, right? But then you meet your spouse at your hometown and they're from a country far away, so you move to be with them. When the timing is right, this falls into place. In fact, be very suspicious of anyone who uses words like never or always in their analysis of your chart. All planetary alignments have positive as well as negative manifestations. Astrology is not an exact science, so if the astrologer is having an ego kick, or maybe they're just having a bad day, let them know they cannot have this ego kick with your chart. Yeah. Now, you can check how positive the astrologer's lifestyle and environment is, because remember, this will impact their state of mind and thus their predictions. If the astrologer's experience is limited by a poor lifestyle, maybe it's hard drinking, maybe it's partying, smoking, eating rubbish, indiscriminate company, then this will color that reading too. Yeah. And they could see, for instance, they could see you have 7th Lord in the 12th house and they could predict divorce or separation for you. But they didn't see the 5 other factors that suggest that your spouse will be from abroad. Maybe they didn't have the time to look at your chart so closely and so deeply. This is an example of that positive or negative manifestation at play that I was talking about. So like, for instance, the 12th house is, yes, it's a house of loss, and therefore it could be separation. It's also a house of prison. But it's also a house of foreign settlement. Yeah. Sometimes it could simply be their own projection onto you, right? We're always projecting on the other, and we do this very often with relationships generally. They could have the 7th lord in the 12th house in their own chart and be divorced. So they're projecting their own experience and outcome on your reading. It is very rarely that something is just impossible by virtue of 1 or 2 planetary alignments. It is of utmost importance to see confluence in a chart. To be confident about a prediction, it needs to be seen from 4, 5, 6 different perspectives, including dashas, including transits, etc. So it takes quite a bit of time to make an analysis and then think to make a prediction. Yeah. Remember, it can also be you that is projecting in that reading to some extent. Right? So let's say that you are going through a phase in your life where you're feeling quite low and hopeless about maybe about a certain matter in your life. And so you decide to seek the guidance of an astrologer. Now, they could subconsciously pick this up and tailor their prediction according to that to match your own thoughts about that situation. And again, this is happening subconsciously, right? This can very easily happen. So the issue can simply be timing. If you're not going through a good phase, then you may not get the right advice. It's as simple as that. So going to another astrologer won't fix the issue. Rather wait if you're going through a challenging phase. 6 months is kind of a rough guide, but you'll know when the time feels right to you to revisit an astrologer for advice. And ask yourself, does what the astrologers say sound completely off base and absurd to you? Does it rub you the wrong way? Then please listen to yourself and disregard what they've said. Don't hesitate to throw that prediction in the dustbin. Yeah, don't get stuck with it. And also don't hesitate to ask them what their success rate is if they're so smug about their predictions when they're making these bold, punchy, negative type of predictions. Yeah. More often than not, astrologers like these are getting a high from a power trip. That's all. It's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. A smart astrologer will see your background. They will see your education. They will see your culture to make predictions. So if you're in your 40s or your 50s and you have children, but you don't have the time to find a suitable partner, they will not predict that you're doomed to be alone. In the era that we live in, whether you're living in a progressive cosmopolitan city or whether you're living in a small town with a traditional setting, with the access everyone enjoys, online, offline, anything is possible. It's just a matter of timing. And of course, the desire has to be strong enough. Yes? It is rare for blunt predictions to come true for many reasons, actually. One being that we live in times where changes happen very quickly for everyone. In any case, chances of coming across that type of fatalistic prediction or that sort of astrologer is usually it's quite uncommon. In fact, I can recall in an astrology conference that I attended a few years ago, a famous YouTube astrologer that was giving a talk, and he had stated that I cannot predict to save my life. And let me tell you, this is true for many, many astrologers. So if their prediction doesn't resonate with you, then listen to that inner voice. You know more than you think you do. Trust yourself, not that astrologer. And of course, get in the habit of observing patterns, right? This is key, in fact. The patterns that keep repeating will always repeat in your life. And astrology is basically, what is it doing? It's uncovering those patterns, it's unraveling them. And it's showing you the timing, right? So if you reflect on these patterns, if you reflect on your life events, you write them down perhaps before having a reading with an astrologer, then this will actually help you and the astrologer to decipher your chart much better. Yeah. Unfortunately, there is no governing body for astrology and astrologers, and thus there is no code of ethical conduct. Nor do you have to go through rigorous testing and training to be qualified as an astrologer. It all depends on interpretations, which are shaped by your experience and your education. The best you can hope for is an astrologer for whom this is a sincere endeavor, someone who is honest, ethical, consistent. An astrologer that has a spiritual bent should also, I think, be valued. Someone with a matured outlook on life. Remember, this is one discipline where age is an asset and not a liability. Ultimately, I believe that you'll end up meeting that astrologer with whom you have some kind of a karmic link, yeah, at that specific time, at that specific place, when you need an answer that perhaps only that astrologer can provide to you. So it's best to just go with your gut feeling that tells you which one is best suited to you at that time in your life, and then accept what they bring to your life. So what's the bottom line here? Well, it's very important to manage your expectations when you speak to an astrologer. What are your expectations? Don't expect them to know everything. If you can gain only one or two things from that conversation, from that reading, that will make a positive internal shift in you, in your life, then that's enough. Don't take everything that was said literally. Go with what feels right to you at that time in your life. And that's very important, at that time in your life. Only certain people that you have a karmic link with, as I said, can bring you that information, that insight. And that's good enough, right? That's good enough. 1, 2, 3 things that you got from that conversation, that's good enough. So again, manage your expectations. Now, part 2 of this conversation, I actually wanted to just spend a couple of minutes speaking about the historical and classical bits when it comes to astrology. So of course here the focus is on Vedic astrology, Jyotish, which is, now Jyotish is not about reinventing the wheel like some people are doing out there, right? They're coming up with these really fanciful ideas and interpretations and all this. Rather, it's actually about interpreting that which is already there, but modifying it for contemporary usage. If that makes sense. You see this with some astrologers. They come up with interpretations that sound so deep, it's so fascinating, but they're not based on any foundation, any substance. Yeah. It's easy to test them out. They don't work. they're fanciful at best, and they sound good. They sound good. So it's not nothing. Rather, astrology is about understanding what's there, and you take those voids, you plug in the missing links, right? And what I mean by that is, because if you look at history, this knowledge was destroyed. This knowledge went missing, and then the knowledge was coded by certain people to keep it for a select few people and groups and things like that. So again, that's yet another reason not to get caught up in the predictive element of astrology. The better approach is, according to me, to ask not why I'm in this predicament, but rather why did I choose this path? and then understand that there's a higher purpose behind it. And then seek that purpose. You know, often people compare themselves to others, and that's completely natural. And then they presume that on a fundamental level, everyone wants exactly the same things in life, exactly at the same time, which is not true. By understanding why you don't have what you think you want, you can empower yourself rather than feel sorry for yourself. So try to understand yourself and why you chose this path is what I always come back to. And this is actually why quick fix remedies don't work. Remedies work in a more complicated fashion. So instead of me like actively doing something to remedy a situation, like maybe a seva or like a daily practice, something in my daily routine, what do? I wear a gemstone, or I change the color of my bed sheets, just to change the situation. And it can work, but it's a short-term fix, yeah? If you want long-term results, you really need to get used to doing something on a regular basis. You need to cultivate a habit. You need to change your daily routine. So the shift then happens in your mind. Astrology originated in the ashram of rishis. In fact, there was 18 rishis that are said to be the founders. Now here I should distinguish with the type of knowledge that we're talking about here, right? Because astrology is a type of knowledge. There's two types. One is called aparavidya, which is things like politics, things like economics are examples of that. And these are the kind of disciplines that we need to understand the material world. And of course, in this way, very important. And then there's of course paravidya, which is divine knowledge, which is essentially the scriptures, what the scriptures revolve around, like the Gita or the Upanishads. So what is astrology? Astrology is basically a bridge between the two, the paravidya and the aparavidya. Yes? So you can take the aparavidya route and see it as a way of making money, and there are plenty of people who do this. Conversely, you can take the para route and see it as a part of a practice, a spiritual practice, a sadhana, or seva. Actually, in fact, for me, this practice started as a seva project, but then it evolved into something else, something more. So astrology, in essence, should be used in conjunction and not in substitute of a daily sadhana, right? Ultimately, the real lesson that you're being taught here is the importance of seva and sadhana if you want to live a fulfilling life. Now, those who have a guru and a disciplined practice will actually understand this very intuitively, but unfortunately, and this happens a lot, fear is a very big motivating factor to seek an astrologer. And unfortunately, a lot of astrologers also play on that, right, to keep you hooked. This is why many people are exploited. The readings that are, that bold, the punchy type of predictions that I was talking about with a negative slant, that's the main tool to create that hook. And that fear, once you're hooked, that fear will keep you coming back to the same astrologer, right? After all, he told you could never have children. So every time you come back to him, he can give you clues about remedies to change your destiny. I mean, like, I've heard this from people, and it's unfortunate. And you can be sure that those remedies would involve selling you expensive gemstones where he or she will make a nice little commission. Yeah. So when you see the higher purpose in life and then you understand its meaning, you're not only going to understand what to let go of in your life and when to do it, but it will just happen automatically, intuitively, if you have a practice, if you have some kind of practice. And ultimately, anyway, it's about letting go, because, and by the way, by letting go, I also mean, this also applies to the obstacles that you may have created in your own mind to reach the fulfillment of your goals, right? Like, because it could be fears and insecurities that you have created, and often that's what it is, and then they become obstacles, and then so that's the letting go process is also to do with that. So if we summarize here the purpose of astrology, number one would be guided action. Number two is it's used as preventive advice. So for instance, when not to act. Number three is counseling and perhaps healing. And then finally, there's that remedial aspect to it, right? The remedial aspect actually has gotten overemphasized in the past how many years to make money in the in the way that I suggested. Now I want to end this talk with the shloka from the Gita that describes four types of devotees. Yeah, the first one is called Artha, who seeks relief from pain and suffering, and for this reason they visit pilgrimages, temples, all the religious places, and they participate in ritualistic forms of worship. And I think most people fall into this category at one point or the other in their life, certainly. And so their main purpose to go to the astrologer is to fix their problems. The Artha, who is someone who prays to God for wealth and power, boons and favors, all the sensual pleasures. So they're into like yagyas and mantras and all that. So again, this is for people who want a quick fix remedy. And then there's what's called the Vigyasu, a learned scholar who wanders in search of truth, engaged in meditation, engaged in sadhana, and has the curiosity of a scientist who wants to understand life on a deeper level, see the patterns, make the predictions, etc., etc. And finally, there is a jnani who is reflective about life and accepts things as they are, but still ponders on the higher purpose. And maybe they're striving for moksha, maybe their focus is liberation. And then there's a deeper understanding that comes from that, where astrology is simply a part of that, their practice, right? So you may fall into each one of these categories at different times in your life. So now I'm going to leave you with a final thought, and that is miracles only happen for those who believe in miracles. Yeah. So hope you enjoyed that. Feel free to leave your comments, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thank you, folks. Cheers.